Today we are going to discuss an interesting model that presents a three-industry model, particularly useful for macroeconomic simulations. This model demonstrates the mechanism of labor shifting between industries and has been designed with a self-documenting approach for future use and development. Before we talk about the details, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Ian Stewart. I have a bachelor's of science in computer science. I'm currently employed as a full stack web developer. I found that I'm quite interested in the field of agent based modeling. I have a particular interest in utilizing agent based models to model economics, particularly because it can help us understand what leads to particular economic outcomes. To date, any work that I've done with agent-based modeling has not been affiliated with any institution.
Could you elaborate on the main purpose of your three-industry model? Specifically, how does it demonstrate the mechanism in which the relative share of labor shifts between industries?
Um, the purpose of this model that I pinpointed in its documentation is to demonstrate a mechanism in which during the exponential increase in productivity, the relative share of labor shifts between industries. In this model, every time step or tick is a month. So every third month, the model increases the rate of productivity by about 0.35%, which amounts to a doubling of productivity every 50 years. The model is written such that people in the model need the necessities produced by the necessities industry, or they have a fixed chance of dying each month if they don't meet their needs. People with sufficiently access funds will buy discretionaries from the discretionaries industry, if available. And adults will work, well, they will seek employment if they don't have work. And the availability of jobs in the industry is based on the industry's financial status, its inventory of the product that it produces, and the demand for that product. These are the basic characteristics of the model from which the shifting of employment between industries arises. I also think that this three industry model of a closed economy demonstrates a useful level of abstraction by defining very broad industries and not having to worry about the individual companies or firms. This particular model makes the assumption that there's price competition within each industry, as this enables the simulation to run smoothly.
What were some of the primary challenges you faced while developing this model, and particularly, in ensuring its usefulness for macroeconomic simulations and its self-documenting nature?
So I would say there were perhaps three major challenges in developing this model. The first major challenge I faced was deciding how to implement a population of people that could live, work, reproduce, retire, and die, as you need a population to simulate an economy. I created mechanisms in which single adult people could pair up and potentially produce offspring. As development of the model progressed, I created the rule that people need to consume the necessity product to avoid the risk of death. And along with this, I made sure that the adults in the model who are younger than the retirement age without a job would look for work. The second major challenge through each iteration of development and testing was determining a starting point, the initial values from which the simulation would start. So for the people agents in the model, for the initialization, I had to develop ways to determine things such as how many people there would be, how old people would be, which of the people might be paired in relationships, and who would have kids. For determining that, I used a lot of randomness. But I still had to have like general guidelines as to like how many people they would start with, and kind of what the what the graph would look like as far as like the range of ages. For the industry agents, I had to determine how much starting money and resources they would have, and I also had to determine what the starting sale prices should be. For the government agent, I had to experiment with different initial tax rates as well as how much money to start the government with. The third major challenge in the development of this macroeconomic model um, was making it relatively economically stable, such that people did not usually starve, which was, of course, a main goal. Um, Two things were key in making the model stable. Um, First, the industries needed to be able to only have as many jobs as there was demand for and as the industry could afford. And second, through its ability to change tax rates, the government needed to be able to maintain enough balance to provide the bare necessities for families or people that could not afford them, which would primarily be people who were unemployed.
What are the key insights or findings from your model analysis, and especially regarding the labor shifts between industries and any unexpected outcomes, such as maybe population starvation leading to yearly simulation exits?
Well, the key finding when running the model for 230 years, which would take about 10 to 20 seconds if you're only running one simulation, um, was that how much the share of total employment shifted between to the discretionary industry. Typically, in the second decade of the simulation, about 6% of the workforce would be employed by the discretionary industry. And over the course of the following 2 centuries, that percentage regularly rises to about 80%. So there were cases that I tried to avoid. I generally, if I did calibration, it was to avoid the starvation scenario. It is still possible, but it's quite unlikely because I tried to calibrate values such that the government would make decisions and the industries would provide the correct amount of jobs to avoid that scenario. Um, how society has handled past increases in productivity, as well as how society will handle future increases in productivity rates, um, is a very important topic. While my economic model was not meant to model a real world economy, aspects of the model could be compared to historical data of, for example, the US economy. So the rate at which productivity increases in the model is comparable to recent trends of the last 150 years or more. So in the US, in the past 50 years, the productivity rate per man hour has not quite doubled, but it's approached doubling. However, for example, from 1910 to 1960, the productivity significantly more than doubled in that time span. And I also made sure that the increase in the population growth was comparable to the kind of the same periods. So it was about 15%, within about 15% of the same increase in population from 1910 to 1960. So it was broadly speaking, it runs pretty close to the same population trends. Some people feel now, with advancements in technology such as artificial intelligence, that we may be seeing significant increases in productivity in the coming decades. So the question of how society may handle disruptive change may be of increased importance.
Since making your model available via comsys.net, did you have any challenges in the process of archiving your model in this platform?
Well, it took a little bit to get used to the documentation, but as far as making it available to others and other people accessing the model, I think it takes an investment of time to learn about any agent-based model, and the specific subject of any given agent-based model can vary greatly. So since ComSys.net makes published models available to anyone, I think the main things that prevent access to others would be lack of awareness, just in the field in general, perhaps lack of interest in the specific subject, and also the model's programming language. I also is worth noting that my model is documented in English, so of course the audience is going to be people that understand English. I feel generally that more people should be introduced to agent-based modeling earlier in their education, because I feel like it's a good tool for understanding and for learning. And the other thing to note is that my implementation of my model was written in Java, so anyone wishing to run it would need to have Java 8 installed on their computer.
Exactly.
So I imagine that could be a barrier for some people.
Thank you for sharing your insights and experience with us.
Yes, of course.